Hey, shalom, shalom from your Dutch Uncle John, here to tell you what it is in Antichrist Part 4. Wow, okay, so what is Part 4 going to be? We're going to go through and look at different types of Antichrist in the Old Testament and New, but Part 4 here is only going to cover some in the Old Testament. Let's go back to Genesis 3:6 and just recap what's happened. When the woman saw that the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eyes, and it was desirable for obtaining wisdom, she took the fruit and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. All right? Because of this, some things got cursed. The snake got cursed to crawl on its belly and eat dust. The woman got cursed with some childbirth pains, and the man, he didn't get cursed. The ground got cursed, that it would bring forth thorns and thistles, thorns then representing sin, and that he would have to work the ground for food. But in all of this despair, we have a glimmer of hope, and that is Genesis 3:15. It's referred to as the proto-evangelium. It's the first gospel. And it says, oh, by the way, 3:15, 15 you would write as Yud-Hey, okay? But Yud-Hey spells Yah, okay? And the problem is with Jewish folk is in Exodus 27 it says, "You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for Yahweh will not leave anyone unpunished who takes his name in vain." And they're not sure what taking his name in vain implies, so they go to extremes not to take his name in vain. So they would never write Yud-Hey for 15. Instead, they would write Tet-Vav. Tet is 9, Vav is 6. Still is 15. So this would be Bereshit 3, Gimel, Tet-Vav. Just FYI. All right, let's read it. "And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel." Enmity is hostility, hatred. Okay, so and we've got these two seeds, the snake's seed and the woman's seed. The snake's seed is going to be Antichrist, and the woman's seed is Yeshua, who's going to conquer this sin. The woman's seed is going to crush the head of the serpent's seed, and the serpent's seed is going to bruise the heel of the woman's seed, which is the Messiah. What you have here is you have Messiah, which in Greek is Christ, and you have Antichrist. This is the first hint of a battle between these two. Okay? One is Christ, one is Antichrist. Messiah, anti-Messiah. So, and there are types throughout the Old Testament that type Antichrist. The first one we see is Adam and Eve's son, Cain. This is the first man ever born into the world. And he prefigures or types Antichrist. That should tell you something. I don't know what, but it should tell you something. Let's go back and read what he did. Genesis 4:4, "And Abel, he also brought an offering from the firstborn of his flock and from their fat portions. And Yahweh looked favorably on Abel and his offering. And he did not respect Cain and his offering. And Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. And Yahweh said to Cain, 'Why are you angry? And why has your countenance fallen?'" Okay, so Cain is upset because he didn't accept, God didn't accept his fruit basket over the Abel's gift or offering of animal, shedding an animal, an innocent animal. By the way, that prefigures something, doesn't it? Okay, so looking in Genesis 4:8, it says, "And Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and killed him. We did a whole talk on Cain and Abel, and we still don't know when it says, and Cain talked with Abel, his brother. We don't know what they talked about, but it ended up he killed him somehow. Maybe hit him on the head with a rock. Maybe we should ban rocks. Anyway, Cain is a murderer. And if we look to the future, Revelation 13:7, it says, then the beast was permitted to wage war against the saints and to conquer them. And it was given authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation. So we can see that Antichrist is also going to be a murderer. You know what? That verse, look, it says, then the beast was permitted to wage war. That's what the Berean Study Bible says. If you look at the New American Standard or the King James or the New King James, it says, it was also given to him to make war with the saints. It didn't say beast, it used a pronoun. That's interesting. And if you go to the Berean Literal Bible, what it actually says is, it was also given to it to make war with the saints. It's not calling him the beast. It's not even referring to him as a him. It refers to him, it, as an it. Antichrist is an it. I like that in the original Greek there. Okay, what else? In 1 John 3:12, it says, do not be like Cain, who belonged to the evil one, and murdered his brother. And why did Cain slay him? Because his own deeds were evil, while those of his brother were righteous. So Cain is of the evil one, Satan. And in 2 Thessalonians 2:9, in the Brit Hadashah New Testament, it says, the coming of the lawless one will be accompanied by the working of Satan, with every kind of power, sign, and false wonder. The lawless one, by the way, is one of the 46 names that Antichrist has in the Bible. I think there's 13 in the New Testament. Could be. And then 33 in the Old. Genesis 4:9, and Yahweh said to Cain, hey, where is Abel your brother? And he said, I do not know. The keeper of my brother am I? That's what it actually says in the Hebrew. You know, we always turn it into, am I my brother's keeper? But anyway, he's lying to God, because he's asked, where is your brother? And he said, I do not know. Liar, liar, pants on fire. And in 2 Thessalonians 2:10, it says, and with every wicked deception directed against those who are perishing, because they refuse the love of the truth that would have saved them. For this reason, God will send them a powerful delusion so that they will believe a lie. And Antichrist is going to be lying all over the place. Genesis 4:13, and Cain said to Yahweh, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Okay, so he's going to have a harsh punishment. What about Antichrist? Revelation 20:10, it says, and the devil who had deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, into which the beast and the false prophet had already been thrown. There they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. Once again, a punishment too great to bear. There's another parallel between these two. Genesis 4:15, and Yahweh said to him, therefore, whoever kills Cain, vengeance will be taken on him sevenfold. And Yahweh set a mark on Cain, lest anyone finding him should kill him. Okay, so Cain is given a mark, and we know in Revelation 13, verse 16 starting, and the second beast, this second beast, by the way, is the false prophet. And the second beast required all people, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their forehead, so that no one could buy or sell unless he had the mark, the name of the beast, or the number of its name. So we have a mark associated with both Cain and Antichrist. So there's your parallels between Cain as a type, a prefiguring of Antichrist. The next guy we see who qualifies for this position is Lamech. Now be careful, there's different Lamechs in the Bible. There's this Lamech comes from Adam, Cain. Cain had Enoch, and then Irad, Mehujael, Methushael, and then Lamech. The good seed Lamech comes through Adam, Seth, Enosh. This is the line that's going to bring forth Messiah someday. And it comes down Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah. This Lamech is different. This was Noah's father. Okay? We're not talking about that one. We're talking about Lamech, the grandson of Cain, multiple grandson. Look in Genesis 4, verse 17. It says, Cain had relations with his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to Enoch. And he built a city and called the name of the city Enoch, after the name of his son. Now to Enoch was born Irad, and Irad became the father of Mehujael. And Mehujael became the father of Methushael. And Methushael became the father of Lamech. You know, notice that in that bad seed list, 2 of Cain's grandchildren, great-great-grandchild and 4 greats, end in El. Well, El is short for Elohim. And I thought, well, that's kind of nice, but why would the bad seeds have El in their name? Were some of them redeemed or had a good side to them? Didn't make sense to me. But when I look up their names, here's the one, Irad begat Mehujael. There's Mehujael's name. And by the way, this name only shows up twice in the Bible, and both times in the same verse, Genesis 4:18. And it's spelled different both times. One of them has 1 yod, one of them has 2 yods. Don't know why. We'll have to ask in eternity. But it comes from the word machach, which means to strike or wipe. Okay, you wipe a plate, or you wipe a city from the plain. Okay, and El, we know, is short for Elohim. So this guy's name actually means smitten of God. So now it kind of does make sense. He's still in the bad seed column, and there he will stay. So let's look at Lamech, this great-great-grandson of Cain. Genesis 4:19, Lamech took to himself 2 wives. The name of one was Ada, and the other was Zillah. Okay, so here we know that Lamech was a man of lawlessness. How do we know that? Because Genesis 2:4 says, For this reason a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. You're only allowed to have 1 wife, and this guy disregarded that instruction and took 2. So we know that he's a man of lawlessness. Remember, the lawless one was one of Antichrist's names. Lamech was a murderer. We already showed you that Antichrist falls into that category. Verse 23 of chapter 4, Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, Listen to my voice, you wives of Lamech. Give heed to my speech, for I have killed a man for wounding me, and a boy for striking me. If Cain is avenged 7-fold, then Lamech 77-fold. So, Lamech and Antichrist, both murderers. They've killed somebody. Lamech looks like he's killed 2 people here. And Lamech is very prideful. What did we just read in Genesis 4:24? If Cain is avenged 7-fold, then Lamech 77-fold. Remember, God put this mark on Cain, and anybody who does anything to Cain, he will be avenged 7-fold. Okay? And Lamech is saying, well, if he got 7, I should get 77. You know, I killed 2 people. Or my killing was greater or better, or whatever he's touting here. Okay? And it was Genesis 4:15. The Lord said to him, Whoever kills Cain, vengeance will be taken on him 7-fold. And that's where he put the sign, the mark on him. So he's very prideful, very willful. Daniel 11:36 refers to Antichrist as the willful king. Okay? And from what we just read here, okay, you have what's happening with Lamech. Okay, and it's all kind of doom and gloom. There's, I killed a man for striking me, and another one, and there's avenging, and doom and gloom. Versus that good seed line, look what it has in verse 25. Adam had relations with his wife again, and she gave birth to a son, and named him Seth. For she said, God has appointed me another offspring in place of Abel, for Cain killed Abel. And that name Seth means appointed. So that sentence makes perfect sense. She named him appointed, for she said, God has appointed me another offspring. So we do see parallels between Lamech and Antichrist. We don't know a whole lot about Lamech. That's what we know is what we know right there. Okay. The next guy we do know a bit more about, Nimrod. You've heard of him before? Okay, and who is Nimrod? Well, Genesis 10:8 introduces us to him. It says, and Cush was the father of Nimrod, who began to be a mighty one on the earth. Oh, so who is Cush? Well, let's go back to Genesis chapter 10. We call this the Table of Nations. Now, these are the records of the generations of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the sons of Noah. And sons were born to them after the flood. So there are the three sons. And you'll notice Ham, his first son is Cush. And Cush then had a guy named Ra'amah, and Ra'amah had Nimrod. So there's the genealogy we're looking at. Okay, Ham, remember, is one of the sons of Noah. Genesis 9:22 tells us about him. Ham, the father of Canaan. By the way, if you look, Canaan is another one of Ham's sons. Ham had 4. Cush, just for the record, Cush is the area of Ethiopia, Sudan. Mitzrayim, that's Egypt. That's the Hebrew name for Egypt. Put is North Africa, not including Egypt. So you got your Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, across there. And Canaan, of course, is this area in the Promised Land. Okay. So Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders and walked backward and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were turned away, so they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine, he knew what his youngest son had done to him. So he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants he shall be to his brothers. Okay, let's tear that apart. By the way, notice Noah is the one who cursed Canaan. God didn't. So whatever curse, I don't know if it applies, does Noah have the ability to curse in his drunken stupor or his hangover stupor? So that's a good question. God didn't do the cursing here. And I was wondering, why did he curse Canaan, which is a grandson, and not curse Ham directly? That's a good question. Okay, why put this curse on Canaan? I don't know. You can see Canaan is the 4th son. And the curse is that he shall be a servant of servants to his brothers. So is that Canaan has to be servant to his brothers, or is Cush or Ham? Who gets... Yeah, good question. Okay, look at Psalm 106, starting verse 21. It says, They forgot God, their Savior, who had done great things in Egypt, wondrous works in the land of Ham, awesome things by the Reed Sea, which is the Red Sea. But notice in Psalm, it's equating Ham, the land of Ham, with Egypt. Because he's repeating all 3 of these, right? Great things in Egypt, in the land of Ham, by the Reed Sea. Those are all 3 areas in the same area. Interesting. Okay. And Notice here in 9:24 when it said, "So Noah awoke from his wine, and he knew what his youngest son had done to him." Who's the youngest son? It was Ham, correct? But notice everywhere you hear about Noah and his three sons, and look in Genesis 5:32, and Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begot Shem, Ham, and Japheth. 6:10, and Noah begot three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. 7:13, on the very same day, Noah and Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. 9:18, now the sons of Noah went out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. If Ham is the youngest son, he's always referred to as the middle son throughout the Bible. That's interesting. I don't know why. Genesis 9:26, and this is when he's put the curse on Ham. He continues, Noah does, and he said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and may he dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant." All right. Interesting. Maybe that's why he's cursing Canaan. It's making it a future thing, that this is going to be an onward. The generations following Ham are going to be servants. And notice, why does he refer to the Lord as the God of Shem and not the God of Japheth? He hasn't done anything wrong. Yeah, he's going to enlarge Japheth. That was nice. But why does Japheth have to live in the tents of Shem? We don't know these answers. But I've got questions. Okay. Okay, Genesis 6:10. And Noah became the father of three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And we know that one of those is going to turn out to be bad seed, right? From Ham. And maybe that ties in with Revelation 12, starting in verse 4. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. Verse 9, the great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth and his angels with him. Notice a third of the angels get wiped out or get sent down out of the sky, and we have a third of Noah's children chose the bad path or ended up on the bad path. Could be. Okay, remember the topic here is Nimrod. We're just trying to find out who Nimrod's father is. Genesis 10:8, and Cush was the father of Nimrod, who began to be a mighty one on the earth. He began to be a mighty one. You know what that tells me? He started small and then grew. And we see in Daniel 7:8, which is about Antichrist, referring to him as the little horn, it says, while I was contemplating the horns, behold, another horn, a little one, came up among them. And three of the first horns were pulled out by the roots before it. And behold, this horn possessed eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth uttering great boasts. So I see Nimrod and Antichrist both starting small and then becoming mightier. Remember in Daniel there were 10 kings and 3 of them got pulled out, but first a little horn came up from amongst them. We covered this in the first parts of Antichrist. Genesis 10:9. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. So it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. You know, in those 2 verses, 8 and 9, the word mighty shows up 3 times. Ding, ding, ding. Do I have a bell? Okay. So, Gibor is the word for mighty. And it is 3 times. Where have we seen Gibor before? All right. Ishiyahu, Isaiah 9:6. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder, and his name will be called Wonderful, comma, Counselor, comma, El Gibor, Mighty God, comma, Everlasting Father, comma, Prince of Peace. So there's that mighty Gibor, okay? And here it's 3 times in 2 verses. Wow, when he repeats 3 times in 2 verses, something big, that's pretty big. Look at Genesis 6, starting in verse 11. And the earth was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked on the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for humanity had corrupted its way upon the earth. Corrupt 3 times in 2 verses. And that led to a flood. So here we got 3 mighties in 2 verses. This is big. By the way, while we're in Genesis 6:11, look, it says, the earth was also corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. There it is in the Hebrew. And that word for violence it's that last word. I have it underlined. It's in putrid green. It's Chet Mem Samek, Hamas. Daniel 11. Starting in 36, then the king will do as he pleases and will exalt and magnify himself above every god, and he will speak monstrous things against the God of gods. He will be successful until the time of wrath is completed, for what has been decreed must be accomplished. Neither shall he regard the gods of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above all. Daniel 11:38, but instead he will honor a God of fortresses, a God whom his fathers did not know. He will honor him with gold, silver, costly stones, and treasures. He will take action against the strongest of fortresses with the help of a foreign god. He will give great honor to those who acknowledge him, and he will cause them to rule over many, and will parcel out land for a price. All right, so there's some Antichrist's predictions for the future, okay? Looks like he's going to be corrupt. He's going to be focusing on money, gold, silver, stones, okay? Now let's look at Nimrod. Genesis 10:10. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. From that land he went forth into Assyria, and built Nineveh, and Rehoboth-ir, and Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah. That is the great city. Notice, he's collecting cities here, Nimrod is. Nimrod is trying to create the first world empire. Antichrist is going to try to create the last world empire. Genesis 10:10 says the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and that is spelled Bet Lamed. And so he would be the king of Babel. By the way, whenever you have a Bet is a house. So we've got 2 of them. We have 2 houses. And Lamed, remember, represents authority. But Lamed also represents Lashon. It's the first letter of tongue, Lashon, where you praise, talk. So you have talking here in different houses, which is kind of what the whole Babel thing was about, right? It's going to end up. I don't want to give the end away, like you don't know it. But Nimrod here is the king of Babel. Isaiah 14, verse 3, it says, and it will be in that day when Yahweh gives you rest from your pain and turmoil and harsh service in which you have been enslaved, that you will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon and say, how the oppressor has ceased, and how fury has ceased. So, Antichrist here is referred to as the king of Babylon. Nimrod was the king of Babel. So, and the king of Babylon, in Isaiah 14:4, is one of the names of Antichrist. So, we've got the same name here for Nimrod and for Antichrist. Genesis 11, verse 1. Now the whole earth used the same language and the same words. It came about as they journeyed east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. They said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they used brick for stone, and they used tar for mortar. All right, come, let us make bricks. You know what that is? That is a communist socialist idea, okay, ideology. Make bricks, we're all the same. Brick, 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 brick. I mean, it leads to disaster. They're doing it in the schools in California. They have the advanced placement classes, but it's not fair that not everybody can reach that, so they're just going to eliminate those classes. You know, make everybody a brick. Make them all a brick. God doesn't make bricks. God makes stones, and every stone is different and beautiful. No two are alike. And in Genesis 11:4 it says, they said, "Come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower whose top will reach into heaven, and let us make for ourselves a name. Otherwise we will be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." Okay, once again, we're pulling up his pride. Let us make a name for ourselves that will reach, a tower that will reach into the heaven. Job 41:34, talking about Antichrist. He looks on everything that is high. He is king over all the sons of pride. Okay, and what Nimrod is saying in Genesis 11:4 actually goes against God. Genesis 1:28 said, God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it." Nimrod is saying, let's build a tower, otherwise we will be scattered over the whole face of the earth. That's what God told him to do. Fill the earth. Genesis 9:1, that whole command is repeated. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth." So both the original creation and at the new creation after the flood, same command: be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Genesis 11, verse 5, the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. The Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they all have the same language. And this is what they began to do. And now nothing which they propose to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down there and confuse their language, so that they will not understand one another's speech." So Yahweh scattered them abroad from there over the face of the whole earth, and they stopped building the city. I like that it says in verse 7, "Come, let us go down and there confuse their language." So who's us? This is a nice point again to the triune nature, the complex unity of God. He's not saying, let me go down there, let us go down. He's talking to the Son and the Spirit. Okay? So 11:8, it says, "So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of the whole earth, and they stopped building the city." So we have the lawless one is overthrown, and that happens in Genesis 11. You got that? Nimrod's big plan stopped and was overthrown. Now we go to chapter 12, and it says, "Now Yahweh said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land which I will show you. And I will make you a great nation. I will bless you, and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse him who curses you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." Notice, it's a sevenfold blessing that Abram receives from God, from Yahweh. And notice also in 11 we have a type of Antichrist, and in 12 we have Abram being given the promised land. So God's call of Abraham from among the Gentiles and his bringing him into the promised land follows Antichrist. 1 John 2:18, children, it is the last hour, and as you have heard that Antichrist is coming, so now many Antichrists have come. Therefore, we know that it is the last hour. In 2 John 1:7, for many deceivers have gone out into the world, those who do not acknowledge Jesus Christ as coming in the flesh. This is the deceiver and the Antichrist. Oh, and look at this. Antichrist. Those two verses in John, 1 John, mention Antichrist. But look what happens right in 11th chapter of Isaiah. It shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people who are left from Assyria and Egypt and Pathros and Cush, from Elam and Shinar, from Hamath and from the islands of the sea. The first one mentioned there is Assyria, which is north, that's kind of the Iraq area, which is where Abraham came from. So we had Nimrod, Antichrist character, in chapter 11 of Genesis, followed by Abraham being taken or sent to the promised land. And in the future we have an Antichrist character mentioned in 1 John and 2 John. And we have a prophecy that the remnant of God's people are going to be brought back from Assyria. That's the first one. That's where Abraham came from. Brought back to the promised land. And from Egypt and Pathros, Cush, Elam, Shinar, Hamath, islands of the sea. But it's the regathering of the Jewish people back into the land. Very, very nice. Many have gone back already. But there's going to be these holdouts. He said he's going to bring them all back. So things are going to get bad with Antichrist. That's going to cause all the Jews to return. We see it again in those days. The house of Judah shall walk with the house of Israel, and they shall come together out of the land of the north to the land that I have given as an inheritance to your fathers. Isaiah 66:20, then they shall bring all your brethren for an offering to the Lord out of the nations, on horses and in chariots and in litters, on mules and on camels, to my holy mountain Jerusalem, says Yahweh, as the children of Israel bring an offering in a clean vessel into the house of Yahweh. So that's a nice parallel, that this type of Antichrist, Nimrod, precedes God's call of Abraham from among the Gentiles and his bringing him into the promised land. And then in the end of days, we're going to have this Antichrist character trying to take over the world. And it's going to precede God's call of Abraham's descendants from among the Gentiles and his bringing them into the promised land. Very nice indeed. Okay, we got one more for this video, and that is Chedorlaomer, type of Antichrist. This is true. Chedorlaomer, we don't know much about him. He shows up in Genesis 14. And let's begin reading. Let's have a drinkage first. Today we have pomegranate. That's one of the holy fruits in the Bible. Genesis 14:1. And it came about in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goyim, that they made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and Birsha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemabur, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. All right. So who are these? All these places. There's Shinar, that's a good one. We have that. Oh, Elasar, Elam, and Goyim. And they're going against Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Bela. You know, Zoar. We have 4 kings against 5 kings. All right, so who are these people? Oh, by the way, these 4 up top, they should be familiar with you. Okay, Shinar, if you remember, that's Babylon. And you go back and watch my early part 1 and part 2 and find out who these players are. Shinar is the ancient name for Babylon, and its picture was the lion. And Elisar, that's Greece, that's the ancient name, Hellas. Okay, and that was the leopard in Daniel's vision. And Elam, that was the ancient name for Iran, Persia, and that was the bear. And the Goyim, that's the nations, and that's represents the beast. These are the 4 kingdoms that are coming. Remember the 3 original. Egypt was the first world empire. It was overtaken by Assyria. Assyria was overtaken by Babylon, which is the lion, during Daniel's time of writing. And Daniel is prophesying the future. And he next sees Persia, the bear, and they overtake Babylon. And then Greece comes across, and Alexander the Great, that's the leopard, fast. And it becomes the world empire. And when Alexander dies, his kingdom is divided by, or his world empire divided by his 4 generals. Okay? One gets Egypt, one gets Mesopotamia, Central Asia, Anatolia, that's Turkey, and Macedon, that's Greece and that area. Then the Roman Empire took over the Greek Empire. And this is the 4th beast in Daniel's vision. All right. And that would be Rome. Maybe you ever see this SPQR? It represents the Senatus Populus K Romanus, which means the Senate and the people of Rome. Then you're going to have in the end of days a revived Roman Empire. That one we said started in I don't know, it could be 1957 with the Treaty of Rome, which was kind of the birth of the EU. Not sure. Anyway, if you look at Daniel's visions, okay, he has a lion, a bear, a leopard, and a 4th beast representing Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. We can look back in history and say, wow, Daniel nailed it, because those are the coming empires from Daniel's day. And there's a total of 7 heads and 10 horns. All right. And if we look at these groups that are joining together with Chedorlaomer, it's Babylon, Greece, Iran, and the nations. So there's got to be something prophetic there. We can also jump ahead to Revelation 13, because John was given this vision also, starting in verse 1. Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, his feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. So we see John is having this same kind of vision. By the way, when John sees this beast coming out of the sea, remember in the Bible that if it's coming out of the sea, those are the nations. And if it's coming out of the land, that's Israel. The sea is always referred to as the nations. Okay? So John's vision, he has a beast, a leopard, a bear, and a lion. Very similar to Daniel's. Daniel's vision is looking forward in history. John's vision, remember, he was taken up into heaven and shown all the things that must come to pass. So John is looking back in history. And what does John see when he looks back? He sees the beast, but he sees Rome too, the revived Roman Empire. Okay, very nice. And you can see that Daniel's visions, John's visions, both match up nicely with the four groups that are associated with Chedorlaomer. Genesis 14, 1 and 2. And it came about in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goyim, that they made war with these five. We've already read that. All these kings came as allies to the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea. For 12 years they had served Chedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled. So, if they are serving this guy, then he is a king of kings. Makes sense? Okay? And the Antichrist, in Revelation 17, starting verse 12, the 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but will receive 1 hour of authority as kings along with the beast. These kings have one purpose: to yield their power and authority to the beast. So he also, Antichrist, is going to be a king of kings, so to speak. Genesis 14, verse 5. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him came and defeated the Rephaim in Ashtaroth Karnaim, and the Zuzim in Ham, and the Emim in Shava Kiriathaim. I'm not going to read all of these because you can see my pronunciation is not so good. But he's going to just, in these verses, show this. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him came and defeated all of these groups. That's what that passage is saying. Chedorlaomer is defeating the nations. And by the way, when you come to lists of names like that you just think, okay, I'm just going to skip over that. You can't imagine the stuff that God hides in lists of names like that. I have not looked into this list of names, but I'm sure he's got stuff hidden there because that's just what he does. All right, Genesis 14:10. Now the valley of Siddim was full of tar pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, and they fell into them. But those who survived fled to the hill country. Then they took all the possessions of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food supply and departed. They also took Lot, Abram's nephew, and his possessions and departed, for he was living in Sodom. Okay, so we've got, if Chedorlaomer, he's conquered all these other kings, Sodom and Gomorrah, okay, so we know he's king of kings. He's also persecuting Israel, because in 14:12 it says they also took Lot, Abram's nephew. So you're taking the family of Abram, and Abram was blessed by God with his promised land. That's a persecution of Israel. That's a type. And in Revelation 12:13, when the dragon saw that he was thrown down to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. So we have both of them persecuting Israel. Okay, so Abram's nephew Lot has been kidnapped or taken hostage. Genesis 14:13. Then a fugitive came and told Abram the Hebrew. Now he was living by the oaks of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and brother of Aner, and these were allies with Abram. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he led out his trained men, born in his house, 318, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. He divided his forces against them by night, and he and his servants attacked them and pursued them as far as Hobah, which is north of Damascus. Okay, I want to point out one thing here is the 318, how they write that in Hebrew. You can see they don't put the big number first. It's 8, 10, and 300. That's interesting. And it's Shemonah, Asur, Vashalosh, Mayot. Okay, there it is. 318. Oh, you know something else that's cool in this verse. Look in verse 14. It says, he armed his 318 trained servants who were born in his own house. Now, that's a lot of people to have being born in your house. 318? Yes? I don't know. But I do remember one guy who was born in his house. Remember back in Genesis, well, how do you remember back in, we're in chapter 14, but in Genesis 15, it says, Abraham said, O Lord God, what will you give me since I am childless? And the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus. Then Abram said, look, you have given me no offspring. Indeed, one born in my house is my heir. So we know that this Eliezer was one of the servants. This, by the way, Eliezer, he is the most trusted servant of Abraham. He is the one who's about to inherit everything Abraham has, because Abraham has no heirs, right? And it's kind of interesting that these two, all the men, the trained servants that went in pursuit to recapture Lot, were all born in his own house. And Eliezer, we know, was one born in my house. Okay? And Eliezer, by the way, El, you know El, that's Elohim. Okay? The word Azur is help or helper. And then you put the yod in there for my. So it's the Lord is my helper. The Lord is my help. Very nice. What is that? That reminds me of something. Remember when Jesus was about to go back up and they all said, don't go, don't go. He said, I have to go. If I don't go, I can't send the helper, the comforter, the Holy Spirit. Okay? You know, we know that there's this complex unity, this triuneness of God. We don't fully understand it, but it's there. And we've covered that in, I have videos on complex unity. I invite you to go look at those. But there is this Father, Son, Spirit kind of triangle that occurs. And they're all one, but they're three separate. How that works, only God knows. Okay? But you have Elohim, the Father, and then you have Yeshua, the Son, and the Ruach Elohim is the Holy Spirit, or the Spirit of God. But in the Abraham story, we kind of have the same picture. You have Abraham, and it's Abba. It starts out Abba, Father, right? And then Bar, Son, and then Rum is exalted. So Abraham's name is the father of exalted sons. So he's a father character. And you have a son, Yitzhak, Isaac, who was promised and who was pretty perfect in all his ways. He only took one wife. He never had his name changed. He never left Israel. He had all these good traits about him. And then you have Eliezer. And Eliezer, God is my helper. This is a picture of the Holy Spirit, right? The most trusted servant. So just keep that in mind, that there is this threeness going on the big picture and also in the small Abraham story. So if we look at these two groups, the troops that he sent to get Lot and Eliezer, they are both born in my house. Okay? And there's 318 trained servants sent for this job. Eliezer, if I put in the gematria values, Aleph 1, Lamed 30, Yod 10, Ayin 70, Zayin 7, and Resh 200, it adds up to 318. You know, that's interesting, because whenever it says, when Abram heard that his brother had been taken captive, he armed his 318 trained servants that were born in his own house. That's a lot. Or did he just take Eliezer? God is my helper. It's something to think about. I'm sure he took God as his helper regardless. All right. Okay, verse 16. He, Abram, brought back all the goods and also brought back his relative Lot with his possessions, and also the women and the people. Then after his return from the defeat of Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shavah, that is the king's valley. And this is where Chedorlaomer meets his end. He's going to be defeated in the king's valley. And there is the king's valley. If you've ever been to Jerusalem, this is looking down in it. You have here Absalom's pillar. Okay, it's in the king's valley. And things are going to be happening in the end of days regarding this king's valley and the valley where this battle Armageddon is going to take place. Revelation 16:16, and they gathered them together to the place called in Hebrew Har Megiddo, the mountain of Megiddo. Revelation 19:19, and I saw the beast, the kings of the earth, and their armies gathered together to make war against him who sat on the horse and against his army. This is that final battle where Yeshua returns and wipes out all the enemies of Israel and of God. So here's the King's Valley. This is the Mount of Olives back in the background, and then it goes down into this valley. You can see Absalom's pillar. It's kind of blocked a little bit by a tree. 2 Samuel 18:18 explains the pillar. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and set up a pillar for himself, which is in the King's Valley. For he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. He called the pillar after his own name, and to this day it is called Absalom's monument. So, okay, so Chedorlaomer, he's now gone. The rest of chapter 14, we're going to be introduced to Melchizedek. Starting in verse 18, and Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. Now he was a priest of God Most High. He blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. He gave him a tenth of all. Okay. Now that's a nice picture there, because it's showing after all this mess, there's a blessing coming to Abram, right? And Abram appreciates and gets the blessing and tithes or gives 10% of all he owned to Melchizedek. Who is this Melchizedek guy? You know, this is a priestly line that way before the Levitical line. Okay, this is kind of mysterious. Melchizedek is his name, by the way, in Hebrew. Melech, you know, is king. Zedek is righteous. So it's the king of righteousness, or my king is righteous. Melchizedek. Many people question who he was, and we all have our suspicions. I think it could have been Shem. Just my thought. Okay, so there's part 4 of Antichrist. To God be the honor, to God be the glory, to God be the praise. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Wait! We have a bonus. Okay, look at this bonus here. In Genesis 11, what did we have? We had Nimrod, who was an Antichrist character, rising. Then in chapter 12, we have Abraham, or Abram, being sent to the promised land. Okay? Down in chapter 14, we have Chedorlaomer, who is an Antichrist type, is defeated. And that happens prior to Melchizedek blessing Abram. Nice order there. Now, what's going to happen in the end of days? Well, we're going to have an Antichrist. The Antichrist is going to rise. And that's going to happen prior to all of the Jews returning to the Promised Land. Not just Abram. That happened thousands of years ago. Now it's today. And let me tell you, a lot of Jews have returned to Israel already, but they're not all back. And God said, I'm going to bring them all back. So I think that will happen after the Antichrist rises, when they experience persecution. Then Antichrist is going to be defeated and thrown into the lake of fire, right, with Satan and the false prophet, the unholy trinity. And that will happen just prior to the King of Righteousness, the ultimate King of Righteousness, Yeshua, blessing Israel. He will rule and reign from Jerusalem for 1,000 years. How beautiful, how beautiful. All right, there's your bonus. Bye-bye. Wait, we have a second bonus. Okay, remember back in Genesis 3:15 was the proto-evangelium, the first gospel, where you have these two seeds, the snake's seed and the woman's seed. And they're going to be having this ongoing battle, okay, until it finally is going to end. The serpent's seed is going to bruise the woman's seed's heel. And we know that Yeshua is the woman's seed. He had his heel bruised. They nailed it to a cross. But Yeshua, the woman's seed, is going to crush the head of the serpent's seed. And that happened the moment he was crucified, because there Satan lost. He lost the ability to get all of us. If we have that perfect blood sacrifice, that korban of Yeshua, God Almighty's blood, perfect, innocent blood, covering our sins, God looks down and he can't see them. Beautiful picture. I invite you, profess with your mouth, confess with your mouth that Yeshua Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, and you shall be saved. Beautiful picture. Not only did Satan lose at that moment, but if you've been to Jerusalem and you've seen Golgotha head bone, it looks like a skull. It's the place of the skull. And I can just see those blood drops dripping down from Yeshua and landing on that mountain, hillside, onto Satan's skull head, where Satan, that's the crushing of his skull. And as we know, Yeshua was crucified with two thieves on either side of him, right? We see that in Luke 23:33. When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him there along with the criminals, one on his right and the other on his left. And in John 19:18, there they crucified him, and with him two others, one on each side with Jesus in the middle. You know, do you ever wonder why was he crucified with two thieves? You know, there's nothing in the Bible that doesn't have a deeper meaning. God he just works on levels. And that's a pretty big thing. I mean, for the next 2,000 years, all we see is a picture of Yeshua on the cross with two other guys next to him. So why was he crucified with two thieves? And the answer is, let's go back to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. There, he is a tree between two thieves. They stole the fruit. So there's the first sin, and that's why the two thieves are there at the cross, representing Adam and Eve, and the tree in the middle, He's crucified on a tree. How nice is that? Kind of. All right. See you soon. There's your second bonus. God bless. Bye. Bye.